I'm Cathy.
And I'm Ola, and welcome to Luna.
Hello, so you just have Ola and me today. Rachel is currently wrapped up in the world of theatre. She's in a local performance. So you just have Ola and me today. So today we're continuing the Classics with Cathy series, and today we're going to look at Doctor Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. And I'm realising as I say this that this is perhaps not appropriate to have Ola in the room for this play, because it is perhaps one of the darkest and grimmest works of fiction that we are going to cover in this series. But some background information first. So Doctor Faustus was a play published in 1604, probably written a bit earlier, by Christopher Marlowe. And Christopher Marlowe is perhaps one of the most intriguing, mysterious figures in literature, in English literature. He was a contemporary of William Shakespeare and perhaps an influence on a lot of Shakespeare's writings. He was a prominent playwright, and he was possibly a spy for Queen Elizabeth I. There is much mystery surrounding him, but one of the weird things about him is that whilst he was studying at Cambridge University on scholarship, there was a point where the University of Cambridge were hesitating to award him his Masters of Art degree because there were rumours that he was going to relocate to France and study there to be ordained into the Roman Catholic Church, which was not allowed at that time under Elizabethan English rule. So the university hesitated. But then the Privy Council of Queen Elizabeth herself wrote to the university and told them to get a move on and award him his degree, because Marlowe's travels had been to do with affairs of matters important to his country, and no more was said about them. But from that, people speculate that perhaps Marlowe was a spy for Queen Elizabeth and would go and infiltrate different conspiracy groups and, report back to the Queen, such as Roman Catholic ones or atheist ones or any others. So that was one mysterious part of him. And then the second big mystery around Marlowe is his death. In London, a bunch of leaflets were printed rather suddenly and distributed, threatening immigrants from France, again suggesting of Roman Catholic leanings. And one man was arrested, and in amongst his papers was one written promoting atheism and other teachings contrary to, English law and English religion at that time. And the guy arrested under torture named Marlowe as the author of that note. So a warrant of arrest went out, Marlowe heard about it and reported duly to the courts, but the courts weren't meeting that day, so they said, come back every day and report here until we get time to deal with you. 10 days later, he was killed in a bar fight. And what happened at that bar fight, it remains mysterious. There was an inquest, which the documents that was eventually found, that suggested that Marlowe was with his friends, seated at the bar, and then a bar fight erupted because of a bill that wasn't being paid, and Marlowe drew out a knife to attack his friend, and in the scuffle, Marlowe ended up being stabbed himself just above his right eye and died instantly. However, there are those who doubt this record of events because every witness to his death were also rumoured to be spies, criminals and professional liars. So who knows what really went on. Scholars and critics who have studied his work since have a huge range of theories of what Marlowe really was like and what his beliefs really were. Some argue that he was an atheist, some argue that he was Roman Catholic, some Protestant, or maybe he was just an opportunist, or maybe he adopted lots of different personas and viewpoints to infiltrate different groups as part of being a spy. And all of that is just the background to him being a fantastic playwright and somebody who captivated the imaginations of his time and also since then, and Doctor Faustus is a great example of that. So let's talk about the play itself. Doctor Faustus is based off German folklore and myths about a scholar who gives his soul to the devil in exchange for magical powers. In Marlowe's version, Doctor Faustus is a scholar who has become bored of all the scientific pursuits that are on offer. and during this time period, the Renaissance, science, mathematics, art, literature, there's these huge advances in all of these areas going on across Europe, and the intellectual world is really excited by it. But Faustus is dissatisfied. It is not enough for him. He wants something more, and he concludes that the only realm of any interest to him is the realm of magic and the supernatural. So he speaks to some scholars who have been trying to lure him into the study of magic for some time, and he meets with them, and then he finds a ritual to summon a demon, which he then does. And after many dire warnings, the demon offers him a deal where for 24 or 25, suddenly doubt myself, but for 24, 25 years, Faustus will enjoy great worldly success and have magical powers, and will be able to astound and have influence and riches, and will be able to do whatever he wants, and he'll have this demon serving him wherever he goes, doing what he wants. But at the end of that time, Lucifer will come and have his soul and take him off to hell. And that is a deal that Faustus makes. There are times when there's a good angel and a bad angel, and they appear and they try to persuade him one way or another. He also gets warnings from the demon himself of what this will mean, and some of his friends try to persuade him. But Faustus, every time the opportunity is offered to him, he makes this deal. And throughout the rest of the play, we see Faustus using his powers to gain riches and esteem. Sometimes he plays pranks on his enemies, and at times he quavers and thinks about repenting and trying to undo what he's done, but then either the devil will appear and distract him with something else. And there are times that Faustus uses his magical powers to summon up parades of people from long ago. And one of the most lasting lines from this play is when Helen of Troy is summoned to Faustus's request so he can see the glorious Helen. And it is from this scene that the line, "Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships?" comes from, which is describing Helen's great beauty, which sparked the Trojan War, and is a line still used today to kind of talk about women of great beauty. Much of this play is written in blank verse. So blank verse is kind of a form of poetry where the words still have a poetic rhythm, often iambic pentameter, but they don't rhyme. So there's still like this poetic rhythm and sound and momentum that comes through the lines, but it doesn't rhyme. So in some ways it's kind of like a building momentum without release, which is really effective in this play. I think the most striking thing about this play is its just relentless march towards doom. Because from the moment Faustus sets on this course, it can only end in his doom unless he chooses a different path. And there seems to be many times throughout the play where he considers, could I call on the mercy of God? Could I reach out for Christ? Could I stop this? Is there anything I could do? And he talks himself right up to the point of making that choice, and every time in the last second, he doesn't. There's even a point right on the final bit where the bell is ringing for his end, midnight approaches, the demons are approaching, and he's saying like, Christ, if I could call upon Christ, then I could be saved. One drop of his blood could save me if I just call on his name. And then the next line is, Lucifer, I call to thee. And one of the interesting things that people study in this play is how it relates to Calvinism. The idea of Calvinism is that God has pre-decided who is going to be saved and who is going to be damned. And God has already decided that. Before people are born, God has already chosen his chosen. And at the time, this was the big debate of the era. Some people really believed and vouched for it, and others rejected it, believing that humans have a choice, and that choice is meaningful. And interestingly, Doctor Faustus was kind of published twice, about 10 years apart, and in the first version, and the second version is longer than the first, and there's much debate over which one Marlowe had the most direct influence of. because as a playwright and copyright laws weren't the same back then, you know, people edited text, added to it, took stuff away, added their own slant onto it, and were not as sure as what was the official one by the original author. But one of the interesting changes between these two versions is one that says, well, Faustus could still be saved if he can repent, I think was the original, if he can repent. And the second version says, if he will repent. Now, will implies that Faustus has a meaningful choice. Can implies that we don't know whether or not God has already determined whether Faustus can repent or not, whether he can be saved or not. So I think that is very interesting. I think my initial reading of the text, but also maybe this is my viewpoint anyway, is that Faustus does seem to be able to make the choice, but each time chooses something else. That interests me more as I think our human nature is very, very stubborn, and it is very hard for us to change paths even when we see it going very, very badly. We hate admitting we are wrong, and we hate seeking change. That's my personal theory. And even though you know where this play is going, you know Lucifer is going to come and claim Faustus, the last scenes as this doom approaches, it is so tense, it is so terrifying, and some plays perform this so well with different actors coming on dressed as demons, infiltrating the stage, that it is quite terrifying. And in fact, one of the early critics of the play, William Prine, in 1632, said that on occasion real demons appeared among the performers, to the terror of everybody involved, and kind of implied that the play was so horrific that it would drive people mad. So it is definitely an effective and arresting play. Another theme that runs through this play is kind of science versus magic. And this was written at a time where, because the belief in supernatural and religion was more widely accepted, whilst these great bounds forward were being made in the realms of, you know, science and medicine and art and mathematics, shouldn't our understanding and scientific approach also be applied to the world of the supernatural? Could that happen? Could we increase our understanding here? And magic in the play just proves to be running by its own rules. It won't bow to the mind of man. It's something beyond our mind and beyond our comprehension, and it kind of speaks towards human arrogance and the limits of our ambition. And should our ambitions be limited? Can we reach too far? That's another big theme of the play. Ambition and pride and ego. Oh, and I find that interesting because this idea of magic versus science, and can we apply rational thinking to understand the supernatural or the magical world, that reoccurs from time to time in human history, and I find that really interesting. So yeah, so that is Doctor Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. It is a play that I think is very much worth your time. I find it quite scary. I would love to go see it live sometime. I think that would be really, really thrilling. And that's it for another episode of Classics with Cathy. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Oh, I've left my notes.